Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Jobu, and as always, thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing to the Jobu Sports Report. Because without you guys, well, this just doesn't work without you guys. Now, guys, things are heating up with the Dallas Cowboys, of course, right now, because I know the league year doesn't start until technically the 14th, and I know they can start talking to free agents on the 11th. And, of course, they're already making moves and stuff. They are going to be sitting down talking with Dez Bryant this week sometime to decide his fate. We just had Jason Garrett's press conference and stuff like that. So there's a lot of news out there for all of us to talk about. And what I want to talk about is something that I'm very, very proud to be part of, because we can't get enough sports out there, and you always want to be able to go through and check the different sources and to make sure that whatever you're getting is right. And that's why I have my buddy Ari Temkin, who's from ESPN Radio in San Antonio, who is one of the are you the creator of Fantom, or you're
one of the creators?
One of the creators. And this is a great Facebook site for all kinds of sports stuff. Some of Jobu stuff is now being shared on there as well. And Ari, you have the platform, and I want you to tell everybody about Fantom.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and it's funny. I'm the head of content at Fantom at facebook.com/watch Fantom, and people like you, Mark, that are creating great content on YouTube. I think YouTube has created an environment where people can create their own channels and then leverage their audiences for their own monetary benefits, and that's been a great ecosystem on YouTube, and they've been successful at it. And I think we're in the infancy, but at the starting point of a huge boost in that on Facebook. And though Facebook Video and Facebook Watch is in its infancy, I think there's a major opportunity on Facebook to do in many ways what you and many other great content creators are doing on YouTube. And so I being in San Antonio and covering the Dallas Cowboys as long as I have, and I've been here now for 6 years. I was in Austin, Texas for 2 years covering the Cowboys there.
Wow.
Before that. So I've covered the Cowboys for the better part of the last decade. I stumbled upon your content on YouTube and really liked what I saw, and I mean it's I think you have the mix between authority, because you clearly know what you're talking about and have the credibility based on that, but then the authenticity of being a fan, of having those experiences that you can share with other fans. And I think, I'll say it simply, I think YouTube in many ways has broken down and made it an easier entry point for people to become members of the media. And I think that's true. And I think Facebook and Fantom, that's Fantom's aim. We are breaking down the barriers at entry point for members of the media, which is a funny thing for me to say, is being a member of the media.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's always fun, it's always funny to me, and part of the reason why I actually got into this more than anything else was it seemed like you got the same narrative from show to show and station to station. It was always Tony Romo was a choker, the Dallas Cowboys suck in December, and that was what you would always get from station to station. And then you can kind of go back through and say, well, no, actually, Tony Romo had more comebacks over the last 10 years than anybody else. So it's kind of like you guys being paid to do this, but you're putting out a lot of misinformation. And, it seems like no matter, it's crazy because the Dallas Cowboys are always the poster boy for the bad boy team, And here it is, we have a New York Jet linebacker drunk driving, blowing a 1.5, going through the Lincoln Tunnel the wrong way, hits a bus and injures 4 people, and nobody talks about it. And so that was one of the reasons why I kind of got into this, is kind of say, hey, wait a minute, look at some of the other stuff that's going on that's beyond the Cowboys. It's not just the Cowboys that get in trouble. It's just that's the team that they focus on.
Romo is a great example, man.
Oh.
I mean, it's funny because, from the outside looking in, you bought the idea that Romo was a choker.
Right.
And then, I got to Austin, I started covering the Cowboys, and you start watching the games, you're like, wait, what? No. Tony Romo is dragging this lifeless corpse of a franchise as close as he can get to the finish line year after year. It's not his fault that for a decade he had a horrible offensive line or no running game.
Or no defense.
Any defense. I mean, what's the stat? Not one season did they have a top 10 defense. I mean,
right.
It's incredible. The numbers. And then, he played through a collapsed lung and punctured ribs. I mean, and it's like, you're right.
He left it all on the field.
The way I look at it, Mark, is we used to wake up and we'd go and read the newspaper, and that would tell us all these things we were supposed to care about. And now we live in a world where it's all fragmented, and as opposed to sitting and sifting through an hour-long sports center to find the 10 minutes where they're going to talk about the Cowboys, and in those 10 minutes they're not going to give you a legitimate discussion on the Dallas Cowboys. Right. That now the content that you want focused on the teams that you care about the most, from the voices that you trust and the people that you trust, like that's the future of media. And you and I have talked a lot about this, but there are a lot of people, especially on Facebook now, that are trying to recreate television on Facebook Live, and that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable because of the same thing that it has many, I would think, media companies failing because they're not meeting the needs of the consumers, which is, again, they want things that are talking about the teams they care about with personalities they trust, and they want the content they consume to be strictly about those things. They don't want to tune into an hour of sports and watch 10 minutes on the Cowboys. They want CowboyJobu to tell them in 10-minute increments what they need to know about the Dallas Cowboys, or 15-minute increments, or 30-minute increments, or an hour increments. All the Cowboys and all the most important pressing things.
Well, I'm all for that. So any of you guys that want to be part of this and kind of do away with some of the talking heads that are out there, I'm more than happy to do that. So you kind of actually just rung a bell on my mind about when we got talking about Tony Romo there, about the defenses that we have. I think if our team is going to have any success, we have got to make changes with our defense, because it seems to me like we are always at offense. That's always one of the top scoring teams in the NFL. But most people don't realize that the thing that won Super Bowls for our Cowboys were the doomsday defense and, of course, the defense during the 90s.
No, it's interesting because I kind of go back and forth on this. I think you don't have to have a top 5 defense and a top 5 offense to win a Super Bowl in today's NFL, right? Like you need one or the other. You need to have a top 5 offense or a top 5 defense. And I think when you look at recent history, you're more likely to win a Super Bowl with a top 5 offense. The only team in recent history that comes to memory is the Broncos, when they were like historically great on defense, or the Baltimore Ravens, when they were historically great on defense. But go through every other Super Bowl champion, and they were just top 5, top 2 in offense. Now, Philadelphia's kind of an exception, but look at the numbers that they put up in the Super Bowl. It's about offense. So I think to a certain degree, you're right. They need a better defense. They need a more opportunistic defense. But, I mean, this Cowboys team is built to win and built to win on offense. And, I think the biggest issue with their offense last year was their offensive line. And I know we talked about this before, but their offensive line was dominant 2 years ago, and it was just okay last year.
The other thing
they didn't have Ronald Leary. I think him being gone, Doug Free retiring. I think they thought they were better equipped to handle those losses than they actually were.
And I think that they also lived on that whole thing of the year before. Basically, all we got to do is line up, and we're man on man, we're going to beat people. Because when you look at the offense, it seemed like it was really simplistic. They didn't really get really creative and try and do a whole lot of razzmatazz. And I think they bought into their own hype with the offense. The other thing that
and if you want more ingenuity, you're probably talking about a post-Jason Garrett world, because that's the truth. He's in my opinion, an average head coach. He's just not. He to me, he projects. They say dress for the job you want. Like, that's Jason Garrett as a coach.
He
projects this aura of a great coach, but he's not. I mean, he's an average head coach. That's what his record suggests. Rob Marinelli to me is interesting because he gets a lot of credit, and I love Rob Marinelli as a guy. I mean, he's a Vietnam vet. He's got unbelievable experiences.
Great with the defensive line.
Yeah, but I think there was this deal last year where they didn't draft certain guys. They drafted Taco Charlton simply because he fit the mold.
Right,
like shorter guys.
Yeah, they don't short guys. They like the long, lean pass rushers. Yeah.
Which, that makes no sense to me. Like, I just don't understand how you. Like, in this era of football, you have to be open-minded on everything. You can't just say the guy has to fit into this specific box, or I'm not drafting him at all. It just is so old school to me. It's not. It just doesn't leverage some of what the best teams in the NFL are doing, which is adapting to the times. And I think Rob Marinelli's done a good job with less, so he should get credit for that. But I also think at some point, they were so reliant on Sean Lee. So if your defense is so fundamentally reliant on Sean Lee, you've got issues, because he's not proven to be reliable because, I mean, he's great. Don't get me wrong. Sean Lee's awesome. He's a better dude than he is football player, and he's a great football player.
Without
but he's not healthy enough. And you just can't count on a guy that you can't count on to be there for 16 games.
And you got to have a backup plan for that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And in this cover 2 scheme, and I know they hate to say it's that simple where it's just cover 2, but I mean, you're heavily reliant upon a linebacker like Sean Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Your corners don't press a lot. They're not up on line of scrimmage. They're playing off the line of scrimmage. So
I hate the 8-yard cushion.
And I know you've talked about this. Maybe they're doing with Marinelli what they did with Monty Kiffin, and that's the hope. And let's hope that Chris Richard, he infuses some more ingenuity into this defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I certainly think, this draft certainly should be about linebackers. About improving that defense. They did that last year, and I think they made some strides to their cornerbacks.
Right.
But ultimately, I think they have to be better. Their defense has to be better than it was before. They don't have to be top 5 great, right? They don't have to be great. They just have to be adequate.
You know what they really need? They need turnovers. That more than anything else. I mean, they did enough to win. We just could not get the ball. It was okay the year before. Sorry about that. Michael's calling here. But they were okay the year before because we didn't turn the ball over. Now, this year we had a few more turnovers, but we didn't get any in return. And I think more than anything else, that's one of those stats that people aren't really talking about much, but that's a game changer. A turnover here and there can make all the difference between winning and losing. We saw that with Ryan Switzer's fumble on that punt. It literally changed the whole momentum of the game. So,
no question.
And
I used to work with the great Dat Wynn.
Yes.
And Dat, aside from playing for the Cowboys, was a assistant coach, under Bill Parcells, and he often told me about, the mantra of Parcells being, you're gonna basically be 500, but the difference between being a playoff team and being a top 10 pick team are those kinds of things,
Right.
are those little things that you don't think about. It's winning close games. It's winning the turnover battle. It's good special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like if every team is going to go, is going to win, is going to go 4-4, then the difference between being a playoff team and not being a playoff team is all of those things that you just touched upon.
Right.
Being fundamentally sound in the turnover game and those types of things. That's what's going to skew, as you just mentioned, the season. And I think when you look at the last 2 seasons for the Cowboys, it's like there's your difference.
Yeah, that really is.
The difference between making the playoffs and being where they were last year was turnovers that absolutely fundamentally killed them.
Mm-hmm.
And
the offensive
they just didn't have those kinds of turnovers last year, and they were turning teams over. And I think the other part to that too is sacks. They were better attacking the quarterback
much better this past year
than they were the year before that. And I think that was their major problem. And even going back to 2014 with the Dez catch non-catch, they could not get after Aaron Rodgers. They could not all year. They could not sack the quarterback.
No, they couldn't.
So I think and bringing back Tank Lawrence, though, you hope that Lawrence wasn't just a 1-year wonder with
contract year special.
But I think bringing back David Irving is also kind of hedges that bet a little bit. I think it's important for the Cowboys to bring back David Irving and continue to establish a aggressive defense that gets after the quarterback, because that's the other thing I really couldn't stand about Rob Marinelli and Jason Garrett in general, which is they're not aggressive. Marinelli would always be, he never wanted to send, more than they're down 3 or they're down 4. He was just always quick to be able to, I want to get home with 4. And they did that a decent amount last year, but just imagine if they become more aggressive and they bring 5, they bring 6.
They just don't want to give up the big play. The last thing I want to ask you before we get out of here is with Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett, we believe, is on the hot seat if you listen to everybody that's out there and stuff, and knowing that he only has 2 years left on his contract.
If they don't make the playoffs next year, Jason Garrett's gone.
Well, the question is, do you think he's going to be going all out, or do you think he's just going to continue to do things his way?
It's a great question. And, I mean, you'd hope that he'd learn from the past, but I don't know that he's capable of doing that, which is interesting because, I think it is a virtue for people to reflect upon past failures and not suppress them. Otherwise, you are doomed to fail them. You are doomed to repeat them. And, in San Antonio, I cover the Spurs, and so I have the pleasure of being around Greg Popovich all the time. And when the Spurs lost the championship in 2013, they didn't come back and say, woe is us. Ray Allen hit this great shot. That's why we didn't win a championship. They came back from the first day of training camp, and they watched film of that Game 6 where they essentially lost the finals the year before. And all year they brought it up. And Pop kept saying they reflected on their past failures, and they proved they wanted to fix those past failures. The reason I say all of that is because after 2014, with the Dez catch, non-catch, when I was at training camp, I asked every member that I interviewed of the Dallas Cowboys. I asked Jason Garrett, so what was your approach in trying to, fix what happened last year and move on to this year? And the approach was this muted sort of, well, we've forgotten about last year and we moved on to this year. Like, that's the whole idea. He's suppressing his past failures, and he's just decided to move on to the future. And you know what? That's what most people do, Mark. That's what most people do. In life, in sports, whatever. Most people, they'd rather suppress past failures than look at them, genuinely reflect on what went wrong and what they can fix to become better. And that's a big picture way of saying, no, I don't think he will change who he is.
But see, here's the thing. I am a carpenter, and I'm a self-taught carpenter. I'm doing YouTube, and I had no clue. I never even thought that I was going to be in YouTube. And a lot of things that I've tried don't work. But what you have to do is you don't fail. You just give up. And to me, you have to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, okay, look at what I did wrong and try with another plan and attack it. But it seems like we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. I just hope that Jason Garrett says, you know what? This is my last stand here. I do something different to try and get a different result, or else I'm gone.
I hope that too, buddy. But I don't know. I think I've seen enough to know that he is what his record says he is, which is an average head coach in a league with a lot of average head coaches.
Okay, with that note.
But they do. That's right. So,
yeah, they have a great offense. Well, maybe with Chris Richard, he'll take up some extra slack on the defense and become a ball-hawking defense that's game-changing. And maybe we get lucky. But again, everybody, I want to thank Ari. I know he's real busy because he's the program director at ESPN Radio in San Antonio. And I see somebody was actually knocking on his door there to probably needing some information and stuff from him. But be sure to check out Fantom on Facebook, because I'm very proud that I'm on there, and there's a lot of great content that's there, so you can get your sports fix if I'm kind of busy and can't get out there. So Ari, again,
we are proud to have you on Fantom. Make sure to check it out, facebook.com/watch Fantom, and check out Jobu, the Jobu Sports Report, who, we are all over getting you on Fantom and on the Jobu page. So I appreciate you, buddy. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'll look forward to continuing talk Cowboys with you, brother.
Hey, man, we got a lot to talk about with the Cowboys. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very, very interesting between with David Irving's tender. It'll be interesting to see what they tender him. Of course, DeMarcus Lawrence, we know he's going to get tagged. In the Dez situation, that's going to be huge.
Dez is gone, man. I think Dez is gone.
I've been saying it. To me, it feels like deja vu with DeMarcus Ware, and DeMarcus Ware wasn't a problem or a distraction on the team. And right. It's interesting that his cap number was $16 million as well. So, it's kind of like history repeating itself.
You think they want Dez Bryant in that locker room telling younger players they shouldn't be playing, when they're not 100%?
Yeah, exactly.
Not a chance in hell.
No. All right, Ari. Thank you very much, everybody. I will see you with any news on the Dallas Cowboys. Thanks, as always, for watching.
Hey, friends. CowboyJobu here at the Jobu Report. The Dallas Cowboy fans are elated. The Redskin fans, not so much. How about them Cowboys? Wait a minute.
Man, the most comfortable hat.
What the fuck? Talk about your confused fans. But who cares? The Dallas Cowboys beat the Washington Redskins for the third time in a row at FedEx. Gotta love it.